We are back on Calhoun County's Most Wanted, the program where you get to help make Calhoun County a better and safer place by helping us lock up some bad guys. I'm Chris Wright, along with our Calhoun County Sheriff, Matthew Wade. Sheriff, it's good to see you again.
Always good to be on the show, Chris.
And we've had another successful week with our viewers helping to get criminals off the streets.
You know, 4 arrests brings our count up to 4,242 people put in jail because somebody was willing to get involved. We appreciate your help and your involvement.
You know, a large part of what you do with the sheriff's office is making sure that people who commit crimes get placed into the judicial system where they can be punished. You don't do the punishing in that way. I guess at the jail you kind of do, but a big part of what you do, though, is just making sure that our citizens can go out and enjoy life in a safe manner, like at a football games. We got high school football starting up this Friday night. You're going to be there.
Everybody loves high school football, and you know, at the county schools, they all have the deputy sheriffs, and we'll have 5 or 6 deputies at each home football game, at every game. And you know, it's our desire that people come and enjoy that fun that we have every year in the fall. And I don't know, just something about football season, it gets people just in a good mood, and we want people to come enjoy the football games and root their team on and be safe in the process. So.
And how do we expect people to act around our deputies at these events?
You know, our deputies are supposed to be talking to people, not because they're in trouble, not because they think they've done something. You know, every once in a while I'll tell somebody, say, "Don't I know you?" And he goes, "Man, I've never been in trouble." I said, "No, it's not like that. You know, I thought we, used to go to Bible study together or something." So, you know, we want our deputies to be friendly. We want them to be out there talking to people, letting them know that they're real people and that they're there to protect them. At the same time, we want people to behave themselves, and while rooting your team on, just remember not to go too far and we have seen fights and rivalries go too far. And, that's what we're there for. Just the presence, we hope, keeps that under control. And our deputies try to remain calm and have that calming presence if a problem does arise.
That's the main thing. Just hope that things don't get out of control. We don't have problems. And a great night is when you don't have to do anything.
Absolutely. Great nights when you don't have to do anything.
All right, except enjoy the game. Okay, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have the first half of this week's lineup on Calhoun County's Most Wanted.
And welcome to this week's edition of Calhoun County's Most Wanted. First up in our lineup this week, Jesus Alvarez Ortega. Mr. Alvarez Ortega, last known to be living in Oxford. He's wanted for domestic violence, 3rd harassment. And take a look at Ashlyn DeVoe. Miss DeVoe, last known to be living in Anniston. She's wanted for failure to appear on possession of a controlled substance. And this is Michael Sears. Mr. Sears, last known to be living in Oxford. He's wanted for manufacturing of a controlled substance. And take a look at Corey Fuller. Mr. Fuller, last known to be living in Anniston. He's wanted for failure to appear on possession of marijuana. First. And meet Larry Cato. Mr. Cato, last known to be living in Anniston, he's wanted on a probation violation for receiving stolen property 3rd and burglary 3rd. And this is Wendy Wyatt. Miss Wyatt, last known to be living in Oxford, she's wanted on a failure to appear on possession of a controlled substance. And last up for our first half, Michelle Jones. Miss Jones, last known to be living in Birmingham, she's wanted for failure to appear on possession of a controlled substance and receiving stolen property 1st. And that's it for the first half of our lineup. Stay tuned for the later half later in the show.
All right, we'll have some more bad guys for you here in just a few minutes. But right now, Sheriff, we want to talk about search and rescue operations, which is something that we hope we don't see a whole lot of in our area. But, a month ago we were all glued to the TV and the internet to see what was happening in a cave halfway around the world. And I'm thinking, we got folks that do that here.
Absolutely. Those kids were in that cave. Everybody was pulling for them and wanting them to be rescued. And they had some really highly trained people that made that happen. I think 1 or 2 of them actually gave their life trying to make that happen. So.
One did, yeah. And so Chris is with the Jacksonville Fire Department, and you are also with is it USART team, is that right?
USART, Urban Search and Rescue.
All right, now being in Jacksonville, you probably got a chance, unfortunately, to do a little bit of that here recently with the tornado coming through.
Yes.
The search and rescue didn't last very long in that, though, did it?
About 16 hours.
Okay. And were there a lot of people that had to be rescued in that situation?
Fortunately, there were not. We had crews that made contact with probably a dozen people or so that needed some assistance getting out of their structures, but for the most part, everybody was able to self-extricate.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're not expecting, I don't guess, that you or anybody on your team is going to be diving into underwater caves for any rescues anytime soon.
Probably not the underwater caves, but we do have some cave rescue certified personnel on the team.
And there are some places, and we don't want to get into that and start sending people into these caves, but that is a potential that could happen here in Calhoun County. What are some of the other things that you have to be prepared for here?
Our team has capabilities of operating at structural collapses, such as natural and man-made disasters, the tornado or other incidents that may occur, acts of terrorism. Structural collapse, confined space, especially in an industrial setting. Trench rescue for some of our construction sites, and the high and low angle rescue, which is, most folks think of that as either cliff rescues or the window washer rescues off the side of the high-rise buildings, or even down, in ravines and stuff. We have the capabilities of going in and utilizing rope systems, being able to recover victims of various circumstances.
Teams are a very important resource to have.
They are, and people, what they don't realize is with the biking community here, there's a fair amount of rescues that are made up on Coldwater Mountain. Where
A friend of mine was the first person to have to be rescued off of Coldwater Mountain.
So you get way out in the woods somewhere and you get injured and you can't bring yourself out. That's very nice to have. It would be if I was hurt anyway.
Yeah, and Anniston has a wilderness rescue team that handles the Coldwater Mountain bike trails, and of course we're always ready to respond to assist any agency that asks. A couple of years ago we assisted the Sheriff's Office from a confined space standpoint with searching some old wells to help them with some cold cases that they had, and we spent many a day 30 or 40 feet
My hat
underground.
goes off to them. They're not getting me in one of those confined spaces. It's just not going to happen.
We were having to go down about 30 or 40 feet and excavate and look for evidence. So,
To me, one of the toughest parts of the job, I think, I'm not a big fan of confined spaces either, but what really is a weakness for me is preparing for something that I might never do. I'm one of these, I'll put it off. If I don't know I got to do it, I'm putting it off, and then all of a sudden I got to do it, and I'm not prepared, but you can't be that way.
not at all, not at all. We have to be proactive with our training instead of reactive. Same with the readiness of our equipment. We have to keep it ready to respond, at a moment's notice. You never know when something may happen. Last year with the partial structural collapse that they had in Oxford with the big plant down there, it was
Honeywell.
just a normal day, and all of a sudden chaos strikes, and we were off responding and assisting our neighbors to the south.
Just in that instance, the floor in there probably had 6 inches to a foot of water.
That's
and all
correct.
these machinery, you don't know if it's
Electrocution hazards,
Yes, it was.
further collapse, entanglement with the wires that were hanging down.
Fireman said, "You need to stay out." You know what I did? Stayed out. You got to listen to the experts.
Yeah, it's not a case of just, I'm going to be the hero and I'm going to charge right in. You're going to be the hero by doing it smart.
Right. It's not a rush right in. It's with technical rescue especially. You have to do a good scene size up and formulate a game plan. But it has to be done quickly but safely. And not just the safety of the rescuers, but also the safety of the victims. The persons that may be entrapped, as well as the additional personnel that may be around the civilians. We don't want to cause further issues.
All right, so you've got to have the trained personnel.
That's correct.
You've got to have equipment. What equipment do you need to have to be prepared for what can happen in Calhoun County?
We have a wide range of equipment, everything from 50-ton airbags to confined space tripods, air shores for helping stabilize a partially collapsed structure, make it stable for our crew to go in so the secondary collapse doesn't injure them or further injure entrapped people. It's a whole truck full of equipment that's in the neighborhood of about $500,000 that we were fortunate enough about 14 years ago to receive some Homeland Security funding. And we purchased the truck and the equipment and paid for the training. And Jacksonville Fire Department works in conjunction with Anniston Fire Department to staff this team.
Well, we want to talk to you some more about some of these searches and rescues, but we need to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We'll have the second half of this week's lineup and more here on Calhoun County's Most Wanted.
And welcome to the second half of our lineup. First up this half, Henry Phillips. Mr. Phillips, last known to be living in Lineville, he's wanted for failure to appear on distribution of a controlled substance. And meet Marquita Burns. Miss Burns, last known to be living in Anniston, she's wanted for failure to appear on obstruction of governmental operations. And this is John Graham. Mr. Graham, last known to be living in Anniston, he's wanted on a probation violation for possession of a controlled substance. And take a look at Clayton Brown. Mr. Brown, last known to be living in Jacksonville, he's wanted on a failure to appear for burglary third. And this is our Darius Savage. Mr. Savage, last known to be living in Birmingham, he's wanted for probation violation on theft of property second. And last up in our lineup this week, Gregory Sansing. Mr. Sansing, last known to be living in Scottsboro, he's wanted for failure to appear on possession of a controlled substance, possession of marijuana first, and use and possession of drug paraphernalia. And that's it for our lineup this week. If you know the whereabouts of any of these folks, please give us a call at Crime Stoppers. That number, 256-238-1414.
All right, we've got some property crimes that we're going to need your help with here in just a few minutes, and we'll have our crazy criminal of the week in just a few minutes as well, Sheriff. But we're talking about search and rescue right now. Chris Roberts with the Jacksonville Fire Department and the USART team. And again, that's
Urban Search and Rescue.
Urban Search and Rescue. Okay, here's something that I probably shouldn't admit to feeling this way, but sometimes I'm watching the news and I'll see somebody that's being rescued from some ridiculous situation. And I'm thinking, how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money are being used to save these idiots who shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place? And we do sometimes make mistakes, but you don't think about that, I'm sure, in the moment. You just do the job to get them.
We work towards a good solution to the problem that we're faced with.
And a lot of the times it's not a situation where people really could have anticipated it, but we can do some things to be prepared for whatever might happen to us, right?
That's correct. Number one, just be smart. Think before you act. Number two is be prepared. With severe weather being what it is in our area, it's a good idea to have a bag prepared for each member of the family that has a spare change of clothes, toothbrush, deodorant, toothpaste, just something to get you through the first 24 to 48 hours if something were to happen, natural disaster strikes, or, we have an incident where, you have a fire in the home or you're displaced from your home. Just be able to be self-sustaining for 24 to 48 hours makes a big difference.
Sheriff, any particular search and rescue operations that you've been a part of that stand out to you?
April 2011 with the tornadoes there, I was in a camper and stayed up there for about 2 weeks. And, seeing people displaced, I was carrying my son through there Saturday and I was showing him some of the damage. Actually, I said, this is where we stayed. And the thing that really brings me back is how many people were affected and how we had to devise a plan to make sure we checked every residence and made sure every person was safe. So.
Right, and we have to go door to door and make visual or verbal contact with everyone that we can to make sure that the structures are clear. And then we use a marking system so that we let other teams know so we don't have a duplication of services. I think in the April 27th tornado back in 2011, we searched, our team, about 550 residences in the first 24 hours. And that's, some had limited or no damage, and some were completely destroyed, but we still had to make a search effort and check and make sure that we didn't have any other victims that were unaccounted for.
Any particular situation, family, home, or whatever that stands out in your mind that you'll always remember?
Well, with that particular one, we had a mobile home that was collapsed on a gentleman, and we worked towards getting him extricated and off to the hospital. And seeing just the utter devastation that a tornado can bring. I had a limited view on the March 19th tornado. I was the incident commander on duty that day, and so my viewpoint ended up, after the first 10 minutes, more of a parking lot view from the staging area and the incident command post. I wasn't able to venture out for about 12 hours or so after the incident, and then seeing the devastation was it's unfathomable.
Of course, the biggest natural disaster that comes to my mind was the blizzard of '93, because I was the one that was in the radio station. Most of the media were turned off, and my radio station was on, and I'd spent the night at the radio station, and I'm here broadcasting for 3 days, doing a marathon broadcast, and taking all these calls and putting people on the air that needed help, putting people on the air that were offering help. And when it was all over, I got all kinds of pats on the back and accolades, and I sat in a studio talking to people on the phone. You guys were out there, and we had so many people, citizens and people in official capacity, that were out there risking their lives and property on the roadways, and that's where all the credit goes.
But everyone plays an integral part. I was on duty for the blizzard of '93, and remember listening to you. And a lot of the information you were putting out was feeding us calls to respond to. And I worked at Anston Fire Department at the time, and we were very busy. But a lot of the calls we weren't getting except through, the media and other sources outside of the phone lines.
So I guess the point is, we all need to be prepared, but it's good to know that we've got some people who are extra prepared for whatever might happen in Calhoun County, and we appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. We will be back in just a moment. We will have the Crime Stoppers segment of the show and our Crazy Criminal of the Week on Calhoun County's Most Wanted.
And welcome to the Crime Stoppers portion of our show, where we ask your help for our investigators on these cases. First up, between July 15th and August 6th, someone attempted to steal a Carrier heat pump from a residence on Mount Gilead Road. They caused significant damage to that heat pump. And between July and August 15th, a home was burglarized at Cross Creek Trail. A mailbox, ceramic coffee mug, Husqvarna zero-turn lawnmower were all taken from that residence. And sometime on August 15th, a gas drive-off occurred at a business on Highway 78 East. A green-colored Ford Flex was seen driving off from that location. And on August 17th, a gray 2002 Chevrolet Cavalier was stolen from a residence on McLean Drive in Oxford. And last up on your caseload this week, on August 17th, a Ruger SR9 handgun was reported stolen from a home on Pattyway Drive. And that's it for the Crime Stoppers portion. If you have any information on these cases, please give us a call at Crime Stoppers. That number, 256-238-1414. Remember, we want your information and not your name.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
We just heard about somebody having a firearm stolen. That doesn't only happen to normal citizens, it also happens to police sometimes.
It does, and the thought of it makes me cringe, Had
an individual that a teenager stole an AR-15 out of a police cruiser.
That's a big fear of mine. If that happened, we would stop at no boundary to find out what happened.
Fortunately, in this case, they had an idea of who it might be, and he helped them out by posting a video on Instagram of himself dancing around to a rap song with his AR-15.
We appreciate that.
That was good enough to get a warrant.
Embarrassing on our end, but when somebody decides to do a criminal act, they'll find a way. But we appreciate the help in locking that person up.
You'll be shocked to know that they found a few other things when they execued the search warrant.
Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. There's an old saying, whether it is where there's smoke, there's fire. But glad they got the weapon.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's all the time that we have this week. We'll be looking for you again next week, but hopefully not in the lineup or on Instagram dancing around with an AR-15 on Calhoun County's Most Wanted.